Good afternoon, everyone, and bienvenidos to the United States Hispanic Business Council South Texas Town Hall. Our program is going to begin here momentarily, so we invite you, take your seats, get cozy with one another, and we'll be with you shortly. Gracias por estar aquí. This is mine, but I'll leave it here. Yours is over there. Just don't take this one. Okay. It is real quiet in here, everyone. We're waiting. I'm building up the suspense. It's a pleasure to be here today. My name is Sabrina Lilu Gonzalez, and I have the honor and privilege of serving as the Vice President and Chief of Staff for the United States Hispanic Business Council. I want to personally thank each and every one of you for making today a priority on a Sunday afternoon and for joining us here. Before our program officially begins, I do want to take a moment to thank La Posada Hotel for welcoming us into your beautiful, historic space. We're excited to be here. I also want to thank the mayor and the judge for welcoming us into your home. I've got to say, you all have some great food. It has been an amazing couple of days just getting to see the town and meet the people. So thanks for welcoming us here. I also want to give a special shout out to Senator Cruz's team, who has been immensely fantastic to work with. The facilitation of making today's event possible has really been very seamless, all thanks to them. So really appreciate that. But with us this morning, we do have a few distinguished guests that I do want to take a moment to recognize, starting off with City of Laredo Council members Vanessa Perez and Melissa Cigarroa. Thank you for being here with us. We also have some folks from the Mexican Consulate, Deputy Consul Martin Alcala, Assistant Mexican Consul Horacio Munguia, Dr. Ileana Arjona, represente Municipio de Nueva Laredo. We also have some friends from various community groups that have joined us today, including Webb County Republican Group, Chairman Luis de la Garza. Thank you for being here. The Gateway City Republican Women's Group, Gigi, there you are. Thank you so much. We also have Glenn Hammer, President and CEO of the Texas Association of Business, with us. And his colleague, David Zapata, who's the Executive Director for Mexico Trade and Investment Policy Council with the Texas Association of Business. Gracias por estar aquí con nosotros. The United States Hispanic Business Council is a nonpartisan organization. And so we collaborate with Republicans, Democrats, and independents alike by reaching across the aisle on critical issues that matter to the American people. Regardless of ideology, at the USHBC, for us, it's a massive priority to collaborate with elected officials and give them a platform to expand on their points of view. Today's event is not a debate, so the objective is to facilitate candid, insightful, and respectful conversations. So we kindly request that the audience be respectful and be silent throughout the program. I know there's a lot of excitement in the room, but also just be mindful that this event is being live streamed and televised. Así que se me portan bien o se me va a salir la cubana. Ya se me salió. There you go. So today's format will consist of our moderator asking our panelists a series of questions. These are questions that have been curated, have been submitted to us at the USHBC that we have put together for today's program. Should time permit, we may have questions at the end, but we received plenty of questions to help make today's program possible, so we'll see how the afternoon takes us here. But each of these questions may be asked of one of the panelists or it may be asked of all three. So just wanted everyone to be aware of the format. And so please note that we are also speaking to our guests today in their current capacity as public officers. Today presents an opportunity for us to welcome a rarely heard point of view. And that's the perspective of the Americans that are living here on the border at the epicenter of the crisis and the debate that it has created. And so the elected officials, the business builders, the job creators, and the taxpayers of Texas, you have created the world's 8th largest economy with a GDP that exceeds over $2.4 trillion. Give yourselves a round of applause, yes. Now that's a number that's larger than the GDP of Italy, Mexico, Saudi Arabia, Spain, and Sweden, just to name a few. So kudos to the Texans in the room here today. But despite this state's amazing contributions to American society, to the American economy, we still don't have the voice that we need. And in today's Washington, if you don't have a voice, you simply just don't get a choice. And so today is about you, the people of Texas, and your elected officials having a voice. And so with that, I want to welcome the President and CEO of the United States Hispanic Business Council, today's moderator, Javier Palomares.
Scripts, and more scripts. I also want to, just kind of a little bit of a privilege, I want to take a moment once again, additionally, to welcome our esteemed friend, Glenn Hammer, President and CEO of the Texas Association of Business. With over 1,500 member companies and over 200 local chambers in their network, the Texas Association of Business is the authority on all things commercial, economic, and business in the Lone Star State. It's no small feat to have him here with us. Glenn, you and Chairman Massey Villarreal are blazing a trail, leading the way for the rest of us, and we are delighted that you're with us. Please help me thank Glenn Hammer for being here again. Gracias, Glenn. Bienvenido, amigo. And he drove here, so que aguante de señor. So, thank you, Sabrina, y buenas tardes a todos. The United States Hispanic Business Council is the leading advocate for America's 4.5 million Hispanic-owned firms in this country that collectively contribute over $800 billion to the American economy every year. And while we're proud to advocate on behalf of men and women who happen to be of Hispanic descent, we never forget that we are first and foremost American business. You can clap for that. And every tax bill we pay, every job we create, and every product we manufacture goes to benefit our American economy. At the USHBC, we always say that the only thing we're prouder of than being Hispanic is being American. So today's discussion is not just on behalf of the Latino community, but all communities and all Americans. And what better place to have this discussion than right here in this town? A town that was founded in 1755, a town steeped in culture and history and tradition. We share so much more with Mexico than just the border. We share a culture, we share a history, we share a people, and we certainly share a future. Our relationship with Mexico is critically important. If you don't believe me, ask the people of Israel what it's like to have a neighbor that doesn't have your interests at heart. America takes it for granted, and it's your, I think, responsibility, and mine as well, to remind America that Mexico is critically important to the United States. It has surpassed China as the #1 trade partner to the United States, and that is something we should all applaud. So it's very fitting that we be here in this city. It's also very fitting that our very first panelist is Laredo Mayor Dr. Victor Trevino, who is in fact a direct descendant of Captain Tomas Sanchez. And I understand we have a few more of the future generation to come here with the mayor's grandchildren right here. Thank God you look like your grandmother, boys. You'll understand later. Tomas Sanchez was the founder of this city, and Dr. Trevino carries on the family tradition. Dr. Trevino is the embodiment of public service and commitment to one's community, and always with a passion for helping the medically underserved. His work to improve conditions on both sides of the border has earned him the very well-deserved reputation as a true champion of all people, a good neighbor, and an amazing emissary for the people of the United States. In fact, very recently, the government of Mexico presented the mayor with the Otli Award. For those of you who don't know, Otli is an ancient native word, and it means to walk the right path. And the mayor certainly continues to walk the right path. The Otli Award is the highest honor that the Mexican government can bestow upon a non-citizen. In receiving this award, the mayor is now part of a very rare group that includes luminaries like Eva Longoria, Jorge Ramos, Julian Castro, Bill Richardson, and Edward James Olmos, just to name a few. Señor Alcalde, muchas gracias. Please take your seat, sir. Help me welcome the mayor, everybody. And I have to say, I keep getting asked, up until literally a couple of minutes ago, why Laredo? Why are you here? With all the stuff you have going on. We've done these all over the nation. And to me, no queda duda, we had to come to Laredo. Laredo is critically important. The rest of the nation maybe doesn't understand it, but I do. I'm from the valley, so a huevo, I get it. No me queda remedio. It's important, though, that America recognize that the Americans living here, building their businesses, raising their families, paying the taxes, and driving this economy forward day in and day out. The rest of the nation talks about the crisis on the border, but they see it in the news for a couple of minutes. You live it day in and day out. And the next generation will have to live with our decisions. And so I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for making time to come out on a Sunday of all things to listen to this conversation. And critical in that conversation was absolutely the mayor and his willingness to work with us. We're also joined by County Judge Tano Tijerina, a fair-minded but very strong judge, physically and otherwise, by the way, whose life and work have been shaped by the personal values of hard work, dedication, and a commitment to service. He is a man of integrity, which I believe is the very reason that he was appointed to the Texas State Commission on Judicial Conduct. He recently helped open a life-saving detox center. He began renovations of local fairgrounds. He's expanded critical border infrastructure and so much more. I'm exhausted just reading all the things he's done. In his third term, Judge Tijerina still has the unwavering determination and commitment to serving the people of Webb County by focusing on public health and ensuring public safety through service and dedication. Judge, please take your seat, sir. Help me welcome the judge, everybody. I was joking with the judge earlier today, and we're going to try to explain. We have, I think, 17 media outlets all over the country tuned in right now. We have, I think, 5 or 6 of them here, and then another 12, 13 all over the nation watching live stream. And I'm hopeful that we can impart upon them the proximity of Laredo and the border, the proximity, and that you're at the epicenter of what's going on. The rest of the nation talks about it, but very few elected officials will make the time to come down here. And speaking of that, help me welcome our third panelist, Senator Ted Cruz. Now I want to point out that originally this conversation was going to be me and the good senator. He's an Aggie. Pobrecito. I'm a Longhorn. He's a Republican. Pobrecito. I'm a Democrat. Es cubano, soy mexicano. But I'll tell you I'll tell you what else he is. He's a dedicated American. He's a dedicated Texan. In 2012, Ted Cruz was elected into the United States Senate, becoming the very first and still the only Hispanic to ever serve in that role for this state and in our history. That deserves a round of applause. The plain-spoken, sometimes controversial, but always staunch fighter for his constituency right here in Texas. The senator's track record is extraordinary, having 16 of his sponsored bills enacted in just a few recent years. And that includes monumental legislation like the CHIPS Act, the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, and the fiscal year 2024 National Defense Authorization, and the list goes on. Given his critical assignments, the senator's work will continue to benefit this nation. He is a member of the Committee on Foreign Relations. He sits on the Committee on the Judiciary. He sits on the Committee of Rules and Administration, and he's the ranking member of the Committee on Commerce, Science, and Transportation. I believe him to be a man who courageously and unapologetically fights for the people of Texas. Indeed, the senator will always vote his conscience despite what popular opinion might hold, and I am delighted to welcome my friend Ted Cruz to the panel. As our nation yearns for leaders that will bring us together, I believe we have exactly that in the mayor, the judge, and the senator. You know, I was practicing this last night, and when I said that, the mayor, the judge, and the senator, it sounds like the beginning of a joke, right? A mayor, a senator, and a judge walk into a bar. Anyway,
why not?
I digress. Today, we will be discussing pressing issues that are important to all Americans, namely the economy, immigration, energy, national security, bipartisanship, and the state of American politics. And all of this amid historic division. Ladies and gentlemen, please, a round of applause for our panelists as we get started. It strikes me that I'm getting old.
It's better than the alternative.
Well, gentlemen, I want to jump right into it. One of the reasons we've gathered here today is to offer different perspectives that each of you will bring the discussion from a wide array of experiences and on a wide array of issues. This variety of viewpoints, though, I think is very important. It is critical, I think, to the success of our nation. So with that, I encourage you to let us know how you think. Obviously, respectfully, and we're all going to behave. But it's important that everyone in this room make time to listen. Don't allow the media to tell you what you should or should not believe. Here they are. Let them tell you for themselves. So, Senator, I'm going to kick it off with you if you don't mind.
Sure.
Senator, why do you think most Americans think our federal government is broken? What can we do to fix it? I thought I'd start off nice and easy.
Well, good, good. Well, Javier, thank you very much.
Yes,
Thank
sir.
you for your longtime friendship. Thank you for your leadership. Thank you for hosting this event.
Absolutely.
Mayor, Judge, I appreciate your joining this event. I appreciate your leadership here in Laredo, here in Webb County, here in South Texas, and I appreciate everyone coming out. Thank you for joining us this afternoon. You know, I think Washington does a whole lot of things wrong, and you can draw a pretty simple contrast between Texas and Washington. In my view, the state of Texas is doing things right now. I think there is a reason that so many people want to come to Texas. You know, I think back, it was 12 years ago that the people of Texas first elected me to the Senate, which has truly been an incredible honor. At the time, Texas was just 26 million people. Today, we're over 30 million people. We've added more than 4 million Texans in just over a decade. It has been well over a decade that we have had more than 1,000 people a day coming to Texas. And I think you can draw a contrast between how Texas operates and how Washington operates. Washington, the spending is out of control, the debt is out of control, and the regulatory burdens coming from Washington are wildly out of control. Look, Texas, we understand, my number one priority in office is jobs. And it is laser focused, jobs, 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 for a real simple reason. That's the top priority of Texans. And that's true in South Texas, that's true up in the Panhandle, that's true in East Texas, that's true in West Texas. Texans want jobs, we want more opportunity, we want better opportunity for our kids and our grandkids. And I think what we understand in Texas is that if you want jobs, the answer isn't a giant building full of government regulators. The answer is small business. The answer is entrepreneurs. The answer is people putting capital at risk.
Here, here.
But I also think government can screw it up badly. And what we've seen in Texas is that if you have low taxes, if you have predictable taxes, if you have reasonable regulations and you get out of the way of small businesses, it creates jobs, it creates opportunity. And so I think we need a lot more of what we have in Texas and a lot less of what we have in Washington of just hammering small businesses and hammering working families.
Thank you. Thank you, Senator. Appreciate that. Mayor, I'll come to you. Mayor Trevino, what are some of the more important issues that you're tackling, and why are they important not only to the people of Laredo, but to the nation as a whole?
First of all, we need to understand that we are a major port in the United States, and with that comes a lot of responsibilities. Major things that are responsible to me, major things that we need to look at is, number one, infrastructure. Better like that. There we go. The things we need to look at is infrastructure, public health, and binational relationships. Because that is what we live every day, and I think that is not only important to us in Texas, but for the rest of the country. Public health, if we don't have a healthy society, we have a weak society. We're medically underserved. We've been medically underserved for decades, and we need to focus on how to get this fixed. We're petitioning for that, but we need to look at that as an important issue. Number two, binational relationships. We have a formula here in Laredo that works, and we have seen it work because we are the lowest illegal immigration crossing in the whole border of Texas. We have a good relationship that we focus on the problems and the solutions, not only the problems. So that's another thing. And the other thing is that we need to look at our infrastructure, because we're challenged with all this commerce, all this growth, and being the biggest port, we have to understand that we also need infrastructure. So we have to petition and have a strong voice in Austin and Washington to get those things done.
Thank you, Mayor. Appreciate it, sir. Judge, I'll come to you next. As a presiding member of the Commissioner's Court, your responsibilities revolve around overseeing the administrative branch of the county. From this perspective, how could the county work to address the growing immigration in this area and the border crisis?
Well, first, I'd like to thank you. I think it's been very important and give us this opportunity here, Webb County and Laredo locally. And I'd like to thank the Hispanic Business Council as well. And that's a good question. You know, it's the immigration, it's been many presidents that have said they're going to fix it, and nothing has been done. Back in the days when it was in the 80s, they had this, they called it the Bracero program. And it was an opportunity for people that come in from Mexico to have an opportunity. Look, I grew up not too far from here. I grew up about we have a ranch about 29 miles from town. And look, as a young man, as a young kid with my grandfather, I remember seeing all those people that were coming in. And all they wanted to do was work. That's all they wanted to do. Nowadays, it's a little different. We have to start working on this immigration because not only those men in the 80s and 90s when they were walking through, they were just looking for jobs. What's happened nowadays is that they're not just looking for jobs, they're looking to take everything else you have. And we have to be very careful. The problem is that everybody thinks it's only Hispanics or from Mexico. And I'm not just talking about them. I'm talking about all the other countries that are coming in through this porous border. So there's a certain point that we're going to need to continue, just like Webb County, being the number one. We're one of the safest cities in the United States of America, safest towns in the United States of America, safest counties in the United States of America. And why is that? Because we have people like our senators, we have people like our governor, we have people that are like our sheriff, our constables, our PD department, locally. We're doing everything we can to keep these people safe. Is there an immigration problem? Absolutely. But we need to start working on it together as one, not just one particular party.
Very well said, sir. Ted, are you sure he's a Democrat? Madre mia, Ted.
In South Texas, there is much more common sense than there is in the rest of the country.
Well, gentlemen, few Americans understand the critical role that Laredo plays in our national economy. In fact, Laredo is home to several international ports of entry. All of you have collaborated with our mutual friend, Congressman Henry Cuellar, and you've all played an important role in expanding these points of entry, which are critical to the American economy. Senator, I'll begin with you. Given the volume of trade at the World Trade Bridge, what sort of impact will its expansion have on our nation?
Well, the expansion of the trade bridge is going to have enormous impact, and it is long overdue. It is critically necessary, and it is an area where I've worked with both of the gentlemen on the stage, worked closely, and as you noted, I've worked closely with Henry Cuellar as well, and we won a big bipartisan victory just 6 weeks ago.
Hear, hear. That was a big victory. Bipartisan, by the way, bipartisan.
And I think it may be worth telling the story of how we passed our bridge legislation, because it impacts Laredo, it impacts all of South Texas and all of Texas. The origins come from a meeting with city leaders of Laredo about 2 years ago, where a number of elected officials and business leaders from Laredo were in Washington that came to my office and expressed concern that the bridge project to expand the World Trade Bridge from 8 lanes to 18 lanes, a massive expansion, was running into bureaucratic roadblocks in Washington. And in particular, so to build any bridge in America, you have to go through what is called NEPA environmental review. That's just part of building a bridge or a highway or any other major project. If you're building an international bridge, if you're crossing a border, you also need a permit from the President of the United States. Now, the way that used to work is the President would grant the permit contingent upon the completion of the NEPA environmental review. And by granting the permit on the front end, it sped up the whole process. Well, unfortunately, Joe Biden, when he came into office, he reversed the process. And Biden announced he was not going to grant any presidential permits to build any cross-border bridges until after the NEPA environmental review was concluded. The effect of that was to delay the projects here, and there are 2 bridge projects here. There's also a bridge project in Brownsville, and there's one in Eagle Pass. All 4 of those projects were delayed 2, 3, 4 years. And not only that, it made it harder for the bridge sponsors to get financing because the banks didn't want to commit money until the presidential permit was granted. And so the delegation from Laredo asked me, said, will you help? And I said, absolutely, that makes no sense at all. I will say, Mayor, naively, I thought it'd be a fairly simple matter. I thought I'd call over to the State Department, they would agree this was idiotic, and they'd fix it. Well, it turned out to be a little more complicated than that. I did call over to the State Department, and they said pound sand. So then I tried to work to bring together a bipartisan group of all of the South Texas congressional leaders. And so I authored a letter to the Secretary of State. It was joined by John Cornyn, was joined by Henry Cuellar, a Democrat, was joined by Monica de la Cruz, a Republican, was joined by Vicente Gonzalez, a Democrat, and was joined by Tony Gonzalez, a Republican. And all of us together urged the Biden administration, said, look, these delays make no sense. Reverse this policy because it's hurting South Texas and it's hurting the whole country. Unfortunately, again, the Biden administration told us, go jump in a lake. So in the fall of last year, I introduced legislation in the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, passed it out of the Foreign Relations Committee with bipartisan support. It went to the Senate floor. It passed on the Senate floor with overwhelming bipartisan support. It went to the House. Henry Cuellar took the lead in terms of corralling Democrats in the House. I took the lead in terms of corralling Republicans in the House. It passed the House with overwhelming bipartisan support, and it was signed into law last year on December 22nd. Now, December 22nd happens to be my birthday, and it was a great birthday present. And what the legislation provides is it sets up a 120-day shot clock, that from the time that legislation was signed, the president has 120 days to grant those bridge permits, and if he doesn't decide, the permits are deemed automatically granted by operation of law. That will speed up all 4 of these projects by years, and the impact on Texas. Every year, Texas and Mexico have about $800 billion in trade. The bulk of it going across the World Trade Bridge right here. And as you know, on any given day, there can be a line of 18-wheelers extending 4, 5, 6 miles into Mexico, just sitting there for hours on end trying to cross that bridge. Those bridges, when they're built and expanded, are going to benefit Texas farmers, Texas ranchers, Texas small businesses, Texas manufacturers. It's going to benefit the entire economy here in Laredo and throughout the state of Texas.
Absolutely, absolutely. And you know, one thing that I can't help but notice about how you led that charge, in our community, we don't talk about it, and shame on us. But I don't know if you noticed the names. Bipartisanship, Republican and Democrat, but it had names like De la Cruz, Gonzalez, Cuellar, Cruz, and the list goes on. If this had been an African-American community where you had the right and the left coming together and working together, the nation would have covered it. It would have been the top of the news. But it was Latinos doing it. And I'm proud that in our community, and certainly here in Texas, we know how to work across the aisle to get the right thing done. And you led that charge. So, Mr. Mayor, how do you think the bridge expansion will improve the quality of life here in Laredo? Because obviously, this is the entry point.
Yes, definitely, and there we go. First of all, thank you, Senator, for being there with Congressman Cuellar to expedite this possibility of getting a presidential permit, because that really cut the time of what we have to deal with these bureaucracies. But I think that because the World Trade Bridge will be expanded, that leaves us to more commerce, more activity, and more money coming into the state and coming into the rest of the country. But one of the things it should also implicate that we need to improve the quality of life to our citizens here in Laredo, people that work and live here, because we are looking at the largest port in the United States. We're looking at all the billions of dollars, and that somehow has to come back to our community. And I'm pushing for that we need to focus on that too. Because once we get a better input of better jobs and better ability for people to work, then we have a better quality of life overall. So that is important, and this is how it would impact our community by getting some of that money back into our community.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, sir. Judge, I know you've been working on the 4-5 International Bridge in Rio Bravo and Cenizo area. Tell us more about that project and the implications for that work.
Javier, if you don't mind, I'd like to revert back to your statement that you made a little while ago that I don't look Democrat. I'm really not.
Oh, yeah.
I'm actually not blue. I'm tired of the red. I'm tired of the blue. I'm red, white, and blue. I'm American. I think it's important. I think what we've lost it seems like it's amazing when somebody wears blue or somebody wears red, it's all of a sudden, my wife's wearing red, I'm wearing blue. I still love her to death, But it's very sad that our country has gotten to this point. That's beside the point. I needed to mention that.
And I need to mention before you answer, sir, you married well above yourself, sir.
Oh, I did. I did. Well done.
I am a member of that same club, and my favorite toast is God bless nearsighted women.
But I digress. Going back to your initial question, Javier, thank you so much. Look, the 4-5 bridge is something that I've been working on since I've taken office. It was on my platform the first time in 2010. Obviously, I lost in 2014. I come around, it was on my platform. 4-5 bridge is extremely important. Why? Because we are $3.2 billion of commerce comes through this port alone. I'm going to put it to you this way, and I'm not a doctor like our mayor here is, but I'm going to put it to you this way. If you look at Webb County, Laredo, Texas, as the aorta, you look at Texas as a heartbeat, and you look at the United States as a body, I guarantee you, if you're not taking care of your aorta, you go and you're going to die. And that's exactly what's going to happen if we do not continue building bridges. We need to continue building bridges. Is what we need to do. And so it's amazing how other communities, and I love El Paso, and I've already said this in front of them, and I'm just going to use this as an example. El Paso has 7 bridges. 4 of them are international. They're ranked 16th in the United States when it comes to ports. Here we are number 1, and we're still lacking for the 4-5. We should be talking about the 5-6, the 6-7, the 7-8. That's what we should be discussing. Not only is it going to help our community, but it's also going to help the Rio Bravo, El Cenizo. It's going to blossom them to become the cities that they want to become. It's going to nourish their opportunity. It's going to be an economic boost that nobody's ever seen before. So this is why I think it's important. And thank you, Senator Cruz and Senator Cornyn, for pushing that agenda through Washington and through the Capitol, because I think it's really important. We need it, and we need it now.
Very well said, sir. Very well said. And in case the point wasn't made clearly enough, as of right now, Mexico does $855 billion of trade with the United States, making them the #1 trade partner, finally surpassing China. And the Port of Laredo is the largest land port in the country, now surpassing Los Angeles. So these are not insignificant issues. On to the third question. On to the third question. Now, a major point of concern surrounding the crisis on the border is the smuggling of drugs and illicit goods. That has to be weighed along with the economic and commercial interests of the country. Those goods include things like illicit cigarettes, counterfeit medicine, and fentanyl. Judge, I'll begin with you. I mentioned your work with the Detox Center, and you are obviously very familiar with this issue. How can our judicial system be used to both provide a line of defense, but simultaneously a source of support for the impacted communities?
Look, we all know it's no secret that fentanyl is taking over our communities, and it's really sad. I think we all have a particular individual or we know someone that has been affected or passed on, unfortunately, because of fentanyl. And it's really sad that we are not again, taking care of our borders. And I'm not saying it's just in the borders, because I will honestly say as well, the United States is just as at fault as this, because when there's a demand, there's going to be a supplier. So we need to start working within our house and within our home to be able to get what we need to do is start working on our mental strength, our mental capacity. We need to start working on this. Why? Mental health is extremely important. Because why are they taking the drug to begin with? What's going on? Is it starting? And look, even our young children, these young children nowadays in schools at a young age are being indoctrinated in a certain way that even their spirits don't even know how to react. So you tell me, how is an adult going to react as well? So we get into these situations that I think it's really important to be able, as far as judicial is concerned, it's really important that we stay firm and do what we're supposed to do. The DAs need to be doing what the DAs are supposed to be doing, and then we need to be funding the police and our sheriff's department and everywhere else, and not defunding them. That's what Webb County did. We funded them.
Senator, thank you, Judge. Senator, and first let me preface by saying that, to my recollection, the market for illicit cigarettes in the United States is a little bit north of $300 million a year. The market for counterfeit medication is valued at $432 billion a year. And fentanyl is the #1 killer for all Americans aged 18 to 45. This is not a light issue. So, Senator, on a national level, what could we be doing better to stem the flow of these illicit drugs and goods into the United States?
Well, Javier, there's a lot we need to do. I don't need to tell the people of Laredo that what is happening on our southern border is an absolute crisis. And it is a humanitarian crisis, from the men and women whose lives are lost every day. Last year, 853 migrants died crossing illegally into our country. From the women and children who are brutalized, and from the massive amounts of drugs, and in particular fentanyl, that's coming across the border. Last year, more than 100,000 Americans died of drug overdoses. That was the highest total in the history of our country. To put that in perspective, that's nearly double the total number of people who died in the entire Vietnam War. Americans.
Wow.
America lost just over 60,000 Americans during the Vietnam War. We lost over 100,000 Americans last year. And I'll tell you, look, Judge, you're right when you say that it touches every family. 13 years ago, my sister Miriam died of a drug overdose. There's not a family in Laredo or Texas or this country that has not been touched by this crisis. And sorry about that. Thank you. There's a lot we need to do, but I think the single most important thing is stop the cartels, because what is happening, when you go down, when I'm on the border, I often will go out with Border Patrol. I'll go out on midnight patrol, and the Border Patrol will tell me that they will face over and over again, they will see traffickers bringing migrants over at one part of the river, and they'll flood one part of the river, and while the Border Patrol is focused on that part of the river, a half mile up the river, they'll take the narcotics away while they're distracted. And when you talk to Border Patrol, and they tell stories that if the agents are looking somewhere else, they'll flip the raft and put children in the river at risk of drowning, so the agents go and rescue the people who are risking drowning. You know, when I brought 19 senators down to the border to see firsthand what was happening, we went out on the river. We saw a man floating dead in the river who presumably had died crossing that day. I'm going to give you an amazing statistic to give you an idea of the impact of the open border policies we have right now. In 2018, the Mexican drug cartels made roughly $500 million from human trafficking. Now, $500 million is a lot of money. Do you know how much they made last year from human trafficking? $13 billion. In just a few years, the cartel's profits from human trafficking have increased 2,600%. And by the way, those statistics are from the New York Times. So that is hardly a right-wing organization. And one of the consequences of it, not only is it devastating America, it's devastating Mexico. Look, all of us remember, it wasn't that long ago that in South Texas you'd cross over the border all the time. You'd go have dinner there, you'd come back and forth, and it was a cross-border life. Yeah. When's the last time y'all did that? You can't, and the impact on Mexico that these cartels, who are vicious, homicidal maniacs, are now making tens of billions of dollars, are economic powerhouses, and our neighbors in Mexico are facing kidnappings and murders, and these unaccountable criminals are wreaking havoc. And so I think we have got to secure the border and stop that drug smuggling and stop the human smuggling.
Thank you, Senator. And I think it's important to remember, if you use the same context that the judge was talking about, the human body, the aorta, if you will, is Highway 35.
Yep.
Literally from Mexico all the way to Canada. That is the main lifeline of human trafficking. So thank you for your work on that front. When I talk to Americans all over this country, it's clear that their financial well-being and the economic state of our nation.
And Javier, let me just, before you move on to that point, you talked about I-35, and I want to talk about all right, Mayor, you're going to get upset because I'm going to mess up the medical analogy. I'm going to mess up the medical analogy, but hopefully we're in the process of growing a second aorta, and I know that's a really weird analogy. And what I mean by that is legislation that I was proud to introduce and pass is legislation designating I-27, the Ports to Plains corridor, from Laredo all the way up through West Texas, the Panhandle, all the way up to Canada. That was legislation I introduced with Ben Ray Lujan from New Mexico, and we passed it. It was Cruz Lujan, and we passed it unanimously through the Senate, through the House, and that is going to create a second enormously important trade route which is going to benefit the entire state and the entire country.
Absolutely.
And let's not forget Highway 69 is also going to be another interstate, and also we're looking at Highway Interstate 2. So there'll be 4 interstates coming into Laredo, Texas, and Webb County.
That's right. So, you know, with that in mind, Mayor, I'll begin with you again. And then the question was, you know, Americans' financial well-being and kind of the economic state of the nation as kind of the top concerns, along with immigration. So, Mayor, how can we lift the financial burden off of the people of Laredo?
I think there's several ways to do it. Number one is promoting Laredo. We need to make sure that we ourselves promote Laredo as the #1 port to attract businesses. We need to make sure that Laredo's safe, being that it's already safe, but we need to bring it out there. Whereas we only have news and all the major networks about drugs on the border, about illegal crossings, about bad things on the border. We need to promote that and change that point of view that people have in the rest of the country for us. So people can come here and live here and work here, but we have to make them sure that we have to let them know that we have things available for them, like enough hospitals, enough infrastructure, enough amenities, so they can come here, safe here. So that's one of the ways to do it. Another way is to promote our commerce, our international commerce, like we said a while ago, and create more ability for the people to have a better quality of life. These are all important things, but I think it has to start with ourselves to promote Laredo as being the major port and a nice city to live in. A lot of people say, especially youth, that there's nothing to do in Laredo and they leave, but they come back. Eventually they come back because Laredo is a family-oriented town, a lot of unity. If your car stops in the middle of the road, there's 3 or 4 people that get down and help you push it. Whereas you go to somewhere else, your car stopped, everybody looks at you, call the wrecker. So this is what Laredo is all about. I think this is our stronghold here.
Thank you, sir. We appreciate it, Mayor. Now, Senator Cruz, and I don't know if you got to see him, but we're joined by our mutual friend, Hal Lambert, is in the back of the room. Hal Lambert is the former finance chair for former President Donald Trump, finance chair for, Governor DeSantis in Florida, and I think he worked with you as well.
He's a very good friend and a great business leader.
An amazing supporter of the United States Hispanic Business Council. This question came from him. Lately, the administration has spoken quite a bit about Bidenomics. I know one of your favorite topics, and how this strategy is, in fact, helping turn around our economy. Senator, what do you think about Bidenomics?
Look, I think a lot of people in Texas and across the country are hurting. They're hurting because the policies the last 3 years haven't made any sense. We have seen unprecedented spending. We have seen trillions of dollars printed. And inflation is hurting every family in Texas and every family in America. When you're paying your bills each month, whether it is going to the grocery store and suddenly the amount you're paying has risen a ton, sometimes even doubled, or whether it is paying your electricity or paying your health care or buying a home and the mortgage rate is 3 times what it was just a few years ago, or filling your gas tank. I think Texans are really hurting, and it's not complicated. When you print trillions of dollars that we don't have, inflation results. We've got to rein in the spending, and to be fair, spending has been a bipartisan problem. Both parties bear guilt from the irresponsible spending in Washington, but we need to see leadership to pull it back. I will say also, look, the most powerful engine is economic growth. And I think critical to economic growth is energy. And Texas is the world's leader in energy. And I've spent 12 years as the leading advocate in the Senate for energy, for oil and gas. And I'll tell you, one victory in particular that I think is really important for South Texas is that I leaned in aggressively with the administration on the Rio Grande LNG export terminal in Brownsville. That's an $18 billion investment in South Texas. And we got that through, which is critically important. It is going to bring thousands of new jobs, high-paying jobs to South Texas. And I got to say, when you talk about Bidenomics, we're seeing policies now from Washington that don't make any sense, that in particular are trying to hammer the state of Texas, trying to hammer oil and gas, including just a couple of weeks ago, Biden halting all new approvals for permits for LNG export, which I got to say is it's a remarkable policy because it is literally as nonsensical as any policy you could come up with. It hurts Texas jobs. It hurts our allies in Europe. There's a war in Ukraine, and what Biden's saying is, you know what, we're not going to give Europe our natural gas. That means they got to buy it from Russia. They got to buy it from our enemies. It helps our enemies. So Biden just helped Russia. He helped Venezuela. He helped Iran. And here's the amazing thing. Not only is it hurting jobs, not only is it hurting our allies, not only is it helping our enemies, it is also hurting the environment. Because in Europe, it's not like they're going to say, oh, it's wintertime, we're not going to heat our homes, we're just going to freeze to death. No, they're going to get that energy, they're going to heat their homes, but they're going to do one of two things. Number one, they're going to buy natural gas from other sources, and just about every producer on earth produces in a much dirtier way than Texas does, that pollutes more, that emits more CO2, or what many of them are doing is they're shifting from natural gas to coal. Germany's doing that right now, and that pollutes much, much more. And I got to say, I personally think the reason Biden announced that policy was as a giant screw you to Texas. I think he was mad at the governor. He was mad that Texas was fighting to secure our border, and I think it was done as a deliberate blow to the state of Texas that makes no sense.
You know, I don't know if I mentioned it, I'm a Democrat, right? Mm-hmm. Just to be clear. But it is really scary, and I quote, my next question, and you could see this, Senator, my next question was, while at the USHBC we believe in clean energy, we have been critical of the Biden administration strategy for getting there and believe they have gone too fast at the expense of critical American industry. So you've actually answered the next question that I had, and I can't thank you enough for fighting the good fight when it comes to protecting
I
the
promise I
traditional oil
wasn't
and gas
cheating and looking
industry.
at the book.
And just one last thing, though, and I think, you know, we're about calling balls and strikes in this association. We're about telling the truth, even when it's uncomfortable. And it's often uncomfortable for me. But it is only fair and honest to say that traditional oil and gas companies were the very first and still are the largest investors in clean energy exploration. And so that deserves acknowledgement, and I want to thank you for fighting that fight. Now, on to the next question. Our nation is at a point of historic division and unrelenting, absolutely unrelenting party politics. The animosity, the vitriol, and the drama and theatrics are at a point where our government is paralyzed, and some days it feels like nothing can move forward. Judge, I'll begin with you as briefly as you can. How do partisan politics impact the work that you do?
Well, it definitely does, and it's very difficult in this position. And the reason why I have come out on Fox a couple of times and I have been on the president, because in all reality, when we ask for the president, a Democratic president, here we go again, when we're asking a Democratic president for help and he shows us none, it's very difficult to be able to not only figure out our budget and be able to spend on some of the mandates that we're getting. It's just extremely difficult. And then when you have, and I'm going to say it, when you have a governor that's a Republican and he looks at us as a Democratic county, sometimes that gets us in a situation as well too. So we're between a rock and a hard place. The only thing that I'm trying to do, and I remind everybody again, we're Americans. When I got elected as county judge, I didn't get elected just for the people that voted for me. I got elected for the people that didn't. I got the people that hated me, that wanted me, that didn't want me in this position. But I'm still working hard for them. And I think we have gone away and astray from that. Because in all reality, and so it's been very difficult. Let me give you a perfect example. Not too long ago, President Biden obviously got in a situation where he took out Title 42. And that is one thing that I will say that I was totally against. I wanted Title 42, and it was very important that we keep Title 42. With that situation happening, guess what happened? Then all of a sudden we got into a situation where Governor Abbott, because Title 42 closed, he decided to go ahead and do a secondary checkpoint. Well, thank the good Lord that I believe that the Governor Abbott has a good sense of mind, because he realized that after a week, we lost $4 billion that week. That gives you an idea how strong this aorta is. Wow. And that gets very difficult at times, because and then we get stuck in the middle here in Webb County and Laredo, Texas. And all we're trying to do is establish more credibility, more understanding, more protection for the people that live here in the United States of America. That's all we're trying to do. That's all. In our little region, we're just trying to impact them as much as possible.
Thank you, Judge. Thank you. We appreciate that. Mr. Mayor, as briefly as you can, how has this political division impacted Laredo?
We have seen this situation happen in our elected officials nationwide, but we need to focus on the fact that we are elected officials and we are public servants. It is not about us, it is about the public. And at the end of the day, el pueblo manda. And that should be for the rest of the country.
El pueblo manda. Very well said, sir. Thank you, Mayor. Senator, how important is bipartisanship to you?
It's very important. And listen, I think there's a difference. I said at the outset, there's a difference between Texas and Washington. I think in Texas, Republicans and Democrats can and do work together, and work together very well. I have always had a very good relationship with the mayor, a very good relationship with the judge. They know that I and my team are ready to work with and for them and for the people of Laredo. That is a huge priority in our office. And I will say, listen, there are issues in Washington where the partisan divide is absolutely real. There are issues like the open borders. There are issues like energy and spending and taxes where there are real partisan divides. But what doesn't always get as much attention is there's also a lot of bipartisan cooperation. So in my 12 years in office, I passed 98 different pieces of legislation into law. And let me just give a couple of examples in terms of bipartisan legislation. One of them that I'll focus on is legislation that dealt with our military academies, our military service academies. And they had in place a policy that really made no sense. It was a policy that said if a female cadet got pregnant, that she was forced into one of three choices. She could either have an abortion against her will, or she can give up her parental rights to her child and legally terminate her rights as a mother, or she could withdraw from the service academy and repay the federal government the entire cost of her education. Now that was idiotic. It made no sense. And so I went to Kirsten Gillibrand, who's a Democrat from New York. Kirsten's a good friend. We work on a lot of issues together. We introduced legislation that's called the Cadet Act. And the Cadet Act ordered the service academies change that policy. If a female cadet chooses to be a mother, that is a wonderful decision, and being a mother or being a father is perfectly consistent with serving our nation in the military. We passed that legislation through Congress, and it is now the law, and at every service academy, female cadets can choose to be a mom if that's their choice.
Excellent. Excellent.
You know, and I'll mention one other area of bipartisan cooperation that really impacts South Texas. So last year, I did an ag tour across the state where I brought in John Bozeman, who's the ranking member of the Agriculture Committee, and we sat down with farmers and ranchers in South Texas, up in the Panhandle, and in West Texas. And we just listened to their concerns. And actually in South Texas, in Brownsville, the farmers raised to me an issue that I didn't know about until we sat at that roundtable. And it concerns water. And in particular, there is a treaty with Mexico, the Treaty of 1944, that Mexico is obligated to provide 350,000 acre-feet of water to Texas each year. We are in the fourth year of a 5-year window on that treaty, and Mexico is in arrears. They have provided about 39% of the water where they should have provided much more. And so the farmers raised that issue to me. I had not heard of it until they did. I went to Washington, and I brought forward an amendment vote on the floor of the Senate. We voted on an amendment to instruct the State Department to lean in aggressively with Mexico and press Mexico to honor its treaty obligations. Although it did not pass, it got a large bipartisan majority vote on the Senate floor. Subsequently, I've spoken with the commissioner, and they're working on negotiating a minute to force Mexico to comply with the treaty obligation. So that's an example where Democrats worked with me to try to help provide the water that is needed by cities, but also by farmers and ranchers here in South Texas that are facing very significant drought.
Yeah, and being a South Texas farmer, I appreciate that, sir. Thank you. And you know, I just have to, I digress a bit maybe, but I want to make sure and say this because I think it should be heard, that regardless of how the media portrays you, Senator, I happen to know a different Ted Cruz. The Ted Cruz that never gets mentioned in our national media. The Ted Cruz that collaborated with me, a known and lifelong Democrat, in trying to reform H-1B high-tech visas. The Ted Cruz that collaborated with Democrat Congresswoman Debbie Wasserman Schultz on stem cell legislation back in the day. The Ted Cruz that worked across the aisle on the Bipartisan Kids Online Safety Act and the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act. The Ted Cruz that collaborated with Democrat Congressman Henry Cuellar and all these gentlemen on the bridge expansion here. That's the Ted Cruz that the media never talks about. So credit where credit is due. Now, we don't always get along, and we don't always agree. Pobrecito, but I'm working with it. But I commend you Honestly, I
Thanks,
commend
Senator.
you and thank you for the work that you've done throughout your career across the aisle. Now, this question is only for you, Senator. This is only for you. According to Pew Research, about 80% of Americans support the idea of age limits for elected officials in Washington, D.C. But for me, personally, it's less about the age of an individual than the cognitive ability of that individual. So, Senator, do you think there should be age limits on critical roles like Vice President, President, Speaker, and Leader of the House?
Well, look, there's no doubt that the current President of the United States and the leading Republican candidate for President of the United States, neither one of them are spring chickens. And, you know, at the end of the day, I think the voters are going to make that determination. And sometimes I agree with what the voters decide, sometimes I disagree. But that's the beauty of a democracy, is the voters get to decide and we'll go forward. And if the voters made the wrong decision, they have the opportunity in 2 years or 4 years to correct that decision, and then that's something the voters have as well.
Gotcha. You know, and we're running short on time. As everybody knows, we got started late. Are you gentlemen okay on time? Can we go a bit longer?
Yeah,
Are you
sure.
okay? Are you sure? All right. So this is a very serious question. Now you can elect to answer it if you want, or pass. That's entirely up to you. And it's actually a question that I've pondered many, many times. And you know, I can't come up with the answer, but maybe one of you gentlemen can. And the question is, who the hell came up with the term Latin X? Who wants to go first, guys? A ver.
I'll take a shot at it.
All right, let's go.
I think we as a people need to identify ourselves as who we are, as productive people. And I don't think, have been taken into consideration enough. And I think that was a result of this. So it was probably thought it was necessary for us to put a label on ourselves, which I don't agree with that. I think we shine by what we are, what we do, and how we excel. So this should not be existent anymore. We're American citizens, and we're part of what makes us proud to be Americans.
Eso. Eso.
If I could answer it just very straightforward. Me llamo Tano Tijerina y soy Latino, period.
Órale.
Así es. I guarantee you it was not a Latino. Look, the entire Spanish language, just about every word is masculine or feminine. It literally guts what it means. And you know, I will say, in the last cycle, I was supporting a number of candidates running for office, and I did a fundraiser for 6 Latinas running all across the country, including Monica de la Cruz. We raised a whole bunch of money for them. And I will tell you that at that event, they dubbed themselves, you may recall a prominent official saying that Hispanics are as diverse as breakfast tacos. To which I responded, actually, I'm a chorizo, egg, and cheese, so that's all right. But the 6 of them promptly dubbed themselves the spicy tacos. and so, look, I think Latinx may be one of the silliest things to have ever happened in our lifetime.
It's on the record, ladies and gentlemen. I want to take a moment to explore the future for each of you. Mayor, your family has been supporting and serving the people of Laredo literally since its founding. You could say que es tradición. How do you plan to continue your mayoral career, and what comes next?
One of the things that's important to me is to make people realize who we are as a people. We have to feel proud. We have to put that responsibility in our citizens so they can belong and they can participate in our government. And that is one of the things I strive for, to make people understand that. Because with that, I think we can succeed and be more strong, and I think this will put a mark in who we are.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Mayor. Judge. Judge, your life has been a journey from professional baseball to serving Webb County and the state. As a man who was clearly called to service, what's the next stop on your journey, sir?
Well, first, I'd like to say that's a matter of God. I only listen to God. That's my moral compass right now. I am strategically and profoundly just being able to just keep enjoy what I'm doing, which is Webb County Judge. It's an honor to be in this particular seat that I have as of right now, and that's only for so long. And then we all start stinking after a while, right? And so it's important. But one of the things that I think is important is we have to continue being who we are and showing everybody who we are. One of the things that I'm working on right now is infrastructure. Infrastructure to me is very important. Not only for here in Webb County to work on outer loops, and I've already talked about the 4 corridors that are coming in, but also even working from Highway 35, all of 35, from San Antonio all the way down. We need truck lanes here. I think that's really important. So if you could help me out with that, Senator, that'd be great. We need more monies for 35 with all the trucks that we have. The other thing that we need to work on is, and one of the things is we just started and we opened up a brand new facility for our Sheriff's Department. That's incredibly important. And I said a little while ago, we fund it, we don't defund it. One of the things that's happening is obviously we're working on that 405 bridge, which was extremely important to be able to create more jobs, create more opportunities for the people of Webb County. We are intelligent, we are incredibly intelligent, highly motivated people that are here in this area, in this region. We just need to continue this. I think it's important to keep showing people. And more importantly, one of my phrases that I always say is puro amor. Because you know what, in our reality, we have to be puro amor. It's important that we continue showing love, not just to our family members, because we all are like family. We get into situations at times, but important to show everybody in the world and the United States. So it's really important. Puro amor.
Thank you, Judge. Senator Cruz. Senator Cruz, there's been no shortage of speculation regarding your role in the future, from president to minority leader. And I say minority leader because lately there have been calls for Leader McConnell to step down. So this is a 3-part question. If Mitch McConnell were to step down and you were called upon, would you accept the role of minority leader?
Well, I will say I'm not holding my breath for that to happen. I do think we need new Republican leadership, and I've been quite vocal about it. I think when it comes to leadership, I'll tell you what I urge anyone elected to office, in particular elected to the House or to the Senate, is I say it's real simple. Just do what you said you would do. That's right. Whatever you promised the voters, whatever you said, in September and October, this is what I'm going to do. When you get there in January and February, just do that.
Do it. Yeah. The second part of the question. Ron DeSantis shot down the idea of being former President Trump's vice president if he was called upon. So the question is, Senator, if you were called upon, would you be Trump's vice president?
Well, once again, I'm not holding my breath. I am not anticipating President Trump making that call. Look, I will tell you, when he was president, I was his strongest ally in the Senate. And I worked hand in hand with him. And I'll tell you, I'm really proud of the policy victories that we won. We passed the biggest tax cut of a generation. It unleashed economic growth. It produced the lowest unemployment in 50 years. It produced the lowest Hispanic unemployment ever recorded. It produced the lowest African American unemployment ever recorded. And if he is reelected, I fully expect to once again be a strong ally and focus on getting the economy moving, on cutting taxes, on repealing job-killing regulations, on unleashing American energy, and on securing the border. I think all of those are critical priorities, and I look forward to working with him to do that.
Okay. The third part of the question, and then we'll move on. And again, I apologize. I know we're running late, but you gentlemen are okay going just a bit longer, correct? We have one more question after this. Now, Senator, you know I've discovered there's a few Republicans down here in South Texas. And many of them would like to see you run for president in 2028. So how about it, Senator? Would you consider running for president in 2028?
Well, look, of course I would. and I ran in 2016. I came very, very close the last time. I'll tell you, it's the most fun I've ever had in my life. And what I'll say is I'm committed to fighting for Texas and fighting for our country. You know, I think back, you've had the opportunity to get to know my father. You know, my dad came to America, and he came to Texas in 1957. And he was an immigrant from Cuba. And when he arrived in Texas, he landed in Austin, Texas. He was admitted as a freshman at the University of Texas, and he was 18. He couldn't speak English. His first job, he washed dishes, making 50 cents an hour. And, you know, I've observed a number of times, if someone had come to that teenage immigrant washing dishes and had said, 50 years hence, your son is going to serve as a United States Senator representing the great state of Texas. That kid could not have imagined that. And I will tell you, in 2013, when I took the oath of office, I was standing on the Senate floor, and I was sworn in with my hand on my father's Bible. And my dad was sitting in the gallery, and just tears were flowing down his face. This is an incredible country. And there, every single day, I leap out of bed because I have the incredible joy, the joy the judge has, the joy the mayor has, of fighting for the people of Texas. And that is a fight worth fighting, and it's a fight I'm committed to with every breath in my body.
You can imagine. Qué orgullo, no? I mean, despite the fact that we're on opposite sides of the spectrum oftentimes, I'm reminded you're the living embodiment of the American dream. And I imagine your dad would be proud. So one final thing, and America's watching. I want each of you to look directly at the camera. Now we have, I think as of a while ago, I was told we have 17 media outlets throughout the country tuned in right now. Most of them are watching it live stream, and they'll take clips from this, and we have 6 of them here right now, including international media. So one final thing. I want each of you to look directly at the camera and tell the President of the United States one thing. What is the one thing that you'd like to say to President Biden? And Judge, I'll begin with you.
Well, President Biden and every other president, to be quite honest with you, please don't forget your people. Please don't forget the people that voted for you and the people that did not vote for you. We live in a beautiful country. We get to debate things that sometimes we don't even understand what we're debating. We get to see sides that sometimes we don't even understand. But yet we come together as one, and this is what's made our great nation come together as one. The synergy that we have, it's important for everybody to understand and not be married to party lines. Let's forget about party lines from now on, and let's stay in the middle. Let's remember that white, because we're all red, white, and blue. So I ask President Biden and every other president that's going to be coming forward, please do not forget your people, because we all are part of it. We are a part of that beautiful flag that waves so proudly, and we are patriotic, and God bless America.
Thank you, Judge. Mr. Mayor, I'll go to you next, sir. What's the one thing you'd like to say to President Biden?
President Biden, we need to look at ourselves as people. We're not Republicans, we're not Democrats, we're people. We need to get together. We need to get away from this dysfunction in the U.S. Congress and make things happen. But to do that, we have to be friends first. We have to realize that that's the only way we can get things done. So please, as a leader, put that motto, that vision in front of everybody so we can move ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And finally, Senator Cruz, what's the one thing you'd like to say to President Biden?
What I'd say to President Biden is come to South Texas. Come to South Texas and see the consequences of the open border that has unfolded over the last 3 years. President Biden, when you came into office, you inherited the lowest rate of illegal immigration in 45 years. you made 3 decisions that caused this crisis. You halted the border wall, you reinstated catch and release, and you pulled out of the incredibly successful Remain in Mexico agreement. That caused this crisis. Here's the good news. You caused it through unilateral executive action. You can solve it through unilateral executive action. President Biden, you can solve this crisis tomorrow. And the reason I say come to South Texas is in Washington, there's a partisan divide on this issue. But if you come to South Texas, it doesn't matter if you talk to Democrats or Republicans. Nobody can defend what is happening at the border. It is inhumane, it is cruel, it is wrong, and it needs to stop.
And I apologize, I know that we've run long on time, so I'm going to skip to our conclusion. And in conclusion, I want to thank everyone involved in putting this program together for participating in an honest, informative conversation that brought diverse perspectives together. Discussions like these are critical to keeping politics informative and fair, and you should be proud for taking part. As we come to a close, I would like to encourage all of us to stay involved, stay informed, and make your voices heard. Our nation is at a transit point, and ensuring everyone has an equal voice is critical to our continued success. By speaking up for what you believe in a respectful and constructive way, you ensure our nation is considering every perspective, and in a government for the people and by the people, perhaps that is the most important thing. That's the America that I strive for. That's the America you strive for. That's the America we all strive for. So thank you again, Mayor Trevino, Judge Tijerina, and Senator Cruz, for taking time to speak to the people of Texas and the nation. We live in a time where politics has devolved into dramatic theater, dangerous rhetoric, and staunch division. It was nice to have a conversation free of all of that. Today, gentlemen, you showed that it is still possible to come together and discuss issues, not as Republicans, as Democrats, or independents, but as you said, Judge, as Americans. Today, we took a small step forward, a step toward change and progress, and we did it together. I think you offer a valuable perspective, free from the constraints of partisan politics. I believe you truly seek to understand your constituencies. I look forward to what you will do for the state of Texas and for our entire country. Mil gracias to each of you gentlemen. You are caballeros for sitting down. Ladies and gentlemen, please stand and help me thank our panelists. Caballero, thank you, sir. Okay, it's a wrap. Now we're going to continue out these doors. The conversation will continue, and we're going to go down to the patio and enjoy a little bit of libation, and you'll get to talk to some of these gentlemen yourselves. Thank you very much, everyone. We'll exit through these doors, por favor.
Yes, please exit through these doors and join us on the west patio. There's going to be
Judge, I
some
think they
folks
wanna do a
greeting you
picture real
guys
quick.
and telling you